Welcome to another episode of the Skytale Insights podcast. I am here with Ray Caruso, who is CEO of Lone Peak Dental Group. Had the privilege of meeting you, I think, almost 2 years now. So it's or actually a little over 2 years. So it's been a minute, and it's wonderful to see you.
Yeah, thanks for the invite. Appreciate you asking me on.
Yeah. So Lone Peak, obviously was doing a little bit of digging before in the podcast and saw you all were founded in 2003 by
Mhm.
two pediatric dentists with I think three Denver locations. You are now over 75 offices across 15 states through both de novo and M&A. That's a huge accomplishment, right? Congrats on that growth.
Yeah, well, thanks. The founders definitely did a lot of that and set the stage for someone like me to come in later on and continue the growth that they started.
Yeah. Well, you've been there for 8 years. So,
Mhm.
I think you have a little something to do with it too.
Thank you. Yes, I have. I've been
Yeah.
very fortunate.
So can you walk us through, I was looking at your background and this is not your first stint in dental by any means. It seems like your career has been like related to teeth for a while now.
Mhm.
Can you start by just walking us through your path here and of course, a little bit more about your role in the Peak today?
Sure, thanks. I started off by joining the Army. And when you join the Army, based on your test scores or whatever, you get to select what kind of job you're going to get. And while I was at the MEP station and I'm looking at what jobs I'm going to select, a dental specialist popped out. And I didn't know what a dental specialist did, but I assumed it was indoors. I assumed I'd be done by 5. I made a commitment to air conditioning and not getting shot at. So it seemed like a pretty good idea.
Oh yeah.
And so that was my first job. I found out pretty quickly what it was. I was a dental assistant, and I did that for a number of years. My first duty station was in Belgium, and
Oh wow.
so I worked in a hospital. The wing was a dental wing with because it was the NATO headquarters. It was a
Wow.
multi national. So I was taking X-rays on every NATO alliance person that you could think of. It was pretty impressive, and it was a lot
Wow.
of fun. And then
Wow.
after that, I went to school because I wanted to be a dentist. Sounded like a good career, and got my degree in biology. And apparently, you have to like do really well in school to get accepted into dental school. And I was on. They said this out loud to me. Actually, they said you're on the low end of what
Uh-oh.
we accept. And so dental school, I thought, man, I guess this isn't in my cards. And so I went to work at the front desk of a dental office in
I love
Springfield,
it.
Illinois. And it just so
Yeah.
happened to be a Heartland office. And back
Oh
then they had,
wow.
yeah, and back then they had 30 when I started. 29, I think, is what the magic number was when I started. And they kept growing. And because of, my tenacity and my, desire to grow, I kept growing along with them. And so by the
Right.
time I left 11 years later, I was managing about 65 of their locations as a director.
Yeah.
And I just got to really learn under the best for sure. Lots
Wow.
of training.
I had no idea that that was your path. What a testament to the fact that like that can still happen, right? Like
Mhm.
you don't have to lateral in from the top to be a leader at a firm that truly,
Oh,
there's
no.
certain still firms where you can work your way up. I love hearing that.
Yeah, and I think I tell the regional managers and the regional directors that I work with today, the best ones are always the ones that started out as dental assistants or at the
Yeah.
front desk.
Yeah. Yeah.
You
Yeah.
could come with a lot of leadership training from Walgreens or, whatever,
Yeah.
and do well, but the it always seems like the best ones were the dental assistants,
Yeah, yeah.
the
Well, you've
front
done
desk.
every job. I mean, it's out, barring potentially what happens in a clinical capacity, like
Mhm.
you intimately know the function of a practice and sort of know every job.
Mhm.
And I think that, there's a long list of the benefits, I think of that.
It certainly helps with connectivity of the team members
Yeah,
because
yeah,
when they see a dental assistant become CEO, that is not common. And they can see that and say, and he's just a normal person. Like,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
I try to come across as humble.
Yeah.
I try to come across as the hardworking, the work ethic that I had, because you go
Yeah.
back to all the way to age 9 when I started out with a paper route.
Right.
Like
Right.
work ethic really hasn't stopped for me.
Yeah.
And maybe it's because I have ADHD and I'm always trying to do something.
That's
But
going to be my next question. Why, why a perfect salt?
yeah. So after Heartland, went to work with another DSO, but they were just getting started up in Chicago. Very just a handful of practices,
Hmm.
and they had me come in as the VP of Ops. The biggest change that I noticed, or the biggest thing that what I just assumed, like you work at Heartland, you need a doctor. You basically just tell somebody, hey, we need a doctor over in this location. And
Mhm.
somebody else has already recruited the doctor, vetted the doctor, got them trained up, and they're in your
Oh,
practice.
there's a machine. Totally.
That
Totally.
machine was there even back in 2010 when I was still
Wow.
there.
Yeah.
When I went to this organization, it's like, okay, we need to hire a doctor. Oh, I have to place an ad. I
Yeah.
have to, like, there's all of these steps. So you're like, oh, wow.
It's that startup life. It's like
Yeah.
you gotta, I guess no one else is gonna do it.
Right. And so it's okay, we want to market for patients. Well, or hey, how do you what was it? How do you increase the fee schedules? I have no idea. Wanda did all the fee schedule increases. I did, yeah, I know it exists. So
Yeah.
you just have to like just take hats off and put hats back on. And that's the founder mode that I
Yeah.
found that I fell into. But all of those things allowing me to see the machine that Hartman built from the 29 offices to the almost 400 when I left, and then the handful of practices to about the 20 practices that I was at
Yeah.
as the COO now. They promoted me after a while of being there. That's when Lone Peak was coming to say, okay, we need to bring somebody in to
Right.
create some sophistication around this.
Right.
So because I had those two experiences and coming into a founder-led organization that had a good grouping of practices and a good grouping of EBITDA now held by private equity, but there was no human resource function, no acquisition function,
Yeah. Yeah.
no nothing.
Yeah.
And so when I came in, that was my role. Then that
Yeah.
took a good 16 months to just build out what we needed to have. At
Yeah.
the same time, trying to figure out what we did have and learn about the doctors and meet everybody and build
Right.
relationships and
Right.
get out there. But that's how I got to where I at least started with them.
Because so when you joined, how many practices were there at the time?
I think there was 37 or 38.
Okay. So kind
All
of a
being
nice sweet spot.
managed, all being managed by somebody with their cell phone. Like
Yeah.
no human resource aspect, like everything was kind of done at the local level.
Yeah.
Most of the practices didn't even know other practices existed.
Wow. Wow. Which is like, on the one hand, incredibly impressive that someone was like keeping all of those pieces together. It also gives me a heart attack as a the employer of personnel. But it's true. I think what a gift to have seen, I think as an operator and probably especially as a consultant, like having been in and experienced companies for at various stages, you learn so much in 0 to 1. Mostly, honestly, just like blocking and tack. For me, it's like blocking and tackling, grit, how to like just figure out, learn, and then
Mhm.
seeing companies that are bigger machines, seeing what best practices look like, ones in between. So it sounds like you were able to really piece together a lot of those experiences and bring it to your this organization, which is potentially why your tenure has been so long. In many ways, I think you've been able to grow with the firm versus having to, have someone be brought in who has, experience because you came in with that experience already.
Mhm.
Most
No.
important question. Um, do you work inside and are you done with work at 5 p.m. just like you wanted to at the very beginning? I assume you have airco if needed.
Well, I'm not digging ditches. Uh, there are lots of times that I'm done at 5.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's lots
Yeah.
of times I'm done at 5, and then there's times that I'm not done at 5, and that's
Yeah.
okay too.
Yeah. I think, yeah, exactly. Um, Work is fluid when you're in business, especially
Yeah.
when we have these things called laptops and phones, and they tend to follow us around. Um, again, sort of looking at that span of 2 decades of Lone Peak's journey so far, what do you think have been, you know, potentially inflection points that have been most meaningful for you along that journey? And that can be related to sort of a follow-up question, which is um, any decisions that you had to make as a leader that maybe were not clear or felt risky at the time that, ended up proving foundational, if you will, for where you are today.
Yeah. You know, I would say that I'm less of a risk taker than a lot of people. And maybe that's why I'm still here after 8 years.
Yeah.
Because the decisions that we made, or the progress that we've made, the discipline around the acquisitions that we've done, and even the de novos that we've done, have been not extremely risky, which some people might think, oh, that's not very sexy, but those are the kind of decisions that work. So the foundational decision to say, okay, we've tried ortho in this one region, seems to be working.
Mhm.
Let's go ahead and roll this out throughout the whole country. It's not extremely risky.
Yeah.
It is foundational, because
Yeah.
now what we've done is we've added a new service line, added several $1 million of EBITDA without adding any additional costs.
Right.
And
Right.
and so that may not seem sexy or exciting, and it's a lot of blocking and tackling and grit to get it accomplished,
Yeah.
but it works. Same thing with adding Saturdays. Again, it's not a risky decision to do it. The risk that you may take is that you alienate team members, or you make doctors think, oh, all you care about is creating more money. Well, you're partners too, so that would
Yeah.
benefit you as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it's also kind of a smart decision. Like,
Yeah.
you've got these practices, you're already paying rent.
Yeah.
Why not
Yeah.
add
Yeah.
more days that create more EBITDA that wasn't there before? Because almost all of it's accretive.
Yeah. I also think that is a patient-centric decision,
Hmm.
because it turns out many people have to work 8 to 5 p.m. Monday through
Shocker.
Friday.
Shocker.
Um, and
Hmm.
it can be really hard to pop out when you take a few
Hmm.
hours off. It's obviously lost money. And so from a patient's perspective, I think that additional capacity is is very meaningful, especially potentially for some of the communities that you serve. But we
Hmm.
can get into that a little bit later.
I think I think the one risky thing that we did that turned out to work really well and became foundational
Yeah.
is the multi-site acquisition. We'd always done singles, and every time we did a single, the things that you deal with in a single acquisition is the exact same thing that you deal with whenever you're doing multi-sites,
Yeah. Yeah.
and the time that it takes is the exact same.
Oh, interesting. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it takes the
Yeah.
same amount of time. Maybe the integration takes a little longer in a
Yeah.
multi-site, depending on how many that you're bringing on board. But what we found, though, whenever we bought the group in Arizona, is that they were already used to having a regional manager. They were already used to having
Hmm.
processes, systems, a payroll company,
Right.
how you use your PTO and how you don't use your PTO.
Right.
And that became like, oh, of course. Well, this is even easier
Right.
when
Right.
you're looking at it from an integration standpoint, whereas a single unit is always going to have the doctor that's making the decision.
Yeah.
So then now they're going to look at you differently. It
Yeah.
just And so we did that group in Arizona, then we did a group in Nashville, and then we did a group in Georgia, and it's like, we should just do this all the time.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And
Have
so
you
then,
sort of stopped? Have you depried like the onesie twosie, the single location?
yeah, I mean, we just did one in November. And it's fine. It worked out really well. The doctor and team are fantastic. They're producing more than they were before, and helping that area. But all of the ones that are in our pipeline right now are all at least 11 practices.
Yeah.
Well, no, there's one that we're doing right now. I can't tell you where, but it's
Yeah.
three. But
Yeah.
they're,
But
the
still.
EBITDA is much bigger. and the time that it takes is the exact same.
Yeah.
You're still, your due diligence process is the exact same.
Yeah.
And you can grow actually, I think, more safely
Yeah.
because you already have somebody who's built out 3 or 10 or whatever. And the
Yeah.
likelihood is those are going to continue. Whereas a single, you're putting all your eggs in that one doctor basket.
Totally. And they've proven out, ostensibly you're purchasing them because this is the case, but they've proven out that you know, they can sort of capture the magic in a bottle, if you will, and expand that into location 2, 3, 4.
Mhm.
And so if they are then going to continue de novoing around via growth, they sort of like have that engine behind them. They sort of know how
Mhm.
to do that already. That's a really interesting, it's an interesting point about, because I think one of the things we see is, obviously you hit a period in time where it makes sense for many reasons for the provider owner to no longer be the CEO and to take on like a management team. And so you're
Mhm.
focusing on purchasing practices that like sort of have your structure in place. You just have to maybe change which accounting software you're using, right? Like
Yeah.
it's like sort of subbing. That's more tactical, and that's like those are
Mhm.
like doable problems versus change management from a people perspective. In my perspective, that's typically the hardest part of
Mhm.
any integration.
Yep.
So one of the things we recently came out with a podcast and a blog on, just like looking ahead. It's now January. It's time for reflection. Looking ahead to where the industry is going, and then also, of course, looking backward to reflect on where we've come from. Before we talk a little bit more about sort of the 2026 industry trends, I'd be curious to hear from your perspective over these past, 20-ish years. Um, you know, in the industry, some of the changes, like what are some of the changes that you've noticed are most significant,
You know
if at
what?
all, if at
I
all?
wish, I wish it was only 20 years.
I was gonna say I'm not gonna date you. So we're gonna just have like you have enough experience to have noticed maybe some changes, and we'll go with that.
Yeah. Oh man, I just don't want to sound like a broken record and say what everybody else says, consolidation and all this other stuff. I think that that just, running a solid business, knowing what your model is, if I know you're not asking for advice, but there's too many times where we just get outside of our lanes
Yeah,
because I used the term sexy earlier or exciting
yeah,
because these things are exciting. And what I'm seeing is the folks that have done that are the ones that are in trouble.
yeah,
And it's no secret. I mean, just all you got to do is just start looking around. There's no secret that a lot of DSOs have made some questionable decisions that have
yeah,
gotten them to the point where either they had to give up the reins to a bank or to the lender or somebody else, or had to do a fire sale or had to restructure everything or
right.
God forbid, you get rid of the entire executive team and start all over, which is what you see over and over again. You said my tenure has been great. I've only been here 8 years.
I know, but it's amazing. I mean, most private
I'm,
equity backed companies, it's like
isn't
that'd be
that,
like three CEOs in by now.
and that's sad. That's sad.
Totally,
And
totally.
I'm going to share something that's a little bit personal.
Yeah,
And I don't think I've never shared this publicly, but this is
yeah,
what's happening. Um, I was only 2 years in, and
yeah.
I was a junior CEO, and we had made some poor decisions on buying outside of our pedo model.
Oh,
And,
yep,
and and I remember the founders even saying out loud, if these don't work, I don't know how to fix them, because they're pediatric dentists.
yeah,
And we, in a very short period of time, we brought in like 8 or 9 oral surgery practices. And man, it was a big old challenge. And it was a
yeah,
challenge because you've got 40 practices that run this exact same way, and then you bring in 8 that run completely different. It's
yeah,
dentistry, but it's just different dentistry.
yeah, yeah.
Um, it's like a school bus compared to a Toyota Corolla. Like they're
Right,
just
right,
different.
right. Yeah,
And so it did not work out.
yeah,
And we had to, it was a big failure. But in the middle of all of that, because our numbers weren't going well and all this, the chairman came to me, and I remember because I was skiing. So I mean, you remember things vividly whenever it's really important. And
Yeah.
and so he came to me and he said, "Hey, look, we love you, we like you. Your results are not good, and we're going to give you some help. I hope you
Yeah.
take the help." And they
Yeah.
brought in somebody into the board that had been a CEO at two different dental companies. And the
Yeah.
guy helped me get to where I needed to
Wow.
be. In a,
Wow.
I mean we screwed up. It took a while to screw it up. So it took a while to get back to where we needed to
Oh,
be.
of
But they
course.
could
Of
have they
course.
could have cut ties. And I
Yeah.
could just be
Absolutely.
another. So I do appreciate that leadership,
Yeah.
and I celebrate that leadership with others and
Yeah.
provide them. If we love somebody and they're really good human beings and they have the work ethic, but they're just not getting the results,
Hmm.
then we have to at least give them the tools to be successful.
Yeah.
Somebody did it for
Yeah.
me, and it wasn't the only time. I've had this happen to me plenty of
Yeah.
times in my career where people
Yeah.
give me, and then that tool may be another human to help me. And
Yeah.
that's been great. And I still have a relationship with that person, even though
Wow.
he's no longer on our board, or
Yeah.
it's because we're in a different private equity group.
Yeah.
And in fact, I talked to him last week. So these are the kind of things that can separate not just the leaders in the company, but the leaders in the private equity group. So I do
Yeah.
I do
Yeah.
respect and
Yeah.
appreciate that.
Yeah. I mean, it's wise because turnover leadership change is so disruptive.
Hmm.
Um, and but the other piece of that is you also had to have a lack of ego and accept help. And being a leader and ego sometimes go hand in hand. And so there's this other piece, which is, you were humble enough to say, like, oof, that's a ski day you're not going to forget. Probably,
Right.
probably snow felt a little bit less good after the call, but like really leads into that relationship and probably proactively sought help to turn things around.
Yeah. Well, I highly recommend the book, The Ideal Team Player by Patrick Lencioni. If you want to talk about humility, that's the book that you should
Yeah,
read. And I
yeah,
read that 2 years before coming, or 2 years before that. So it was right before I came to the organization. And when I hired every team member that was in a leadership role, when I was looking for them, obviously a CFO has to have the chops to be a CFO.
right, right,
But a humble CFO is better than an egotistical CFO. And so, how do you find out if this person is humble? How do you find out what their work ethic is like? And how do you find out how they treat other people? And if
yeah,
you've got all three of those, somebody who's
yeah,
humble, somebody who's hungry, and somebody who has that ability to connect and work well with others, you're
yeah,
going to have great people. And
yeah,
so,
yeah.
my chief people officer has been with me for almost 8 years now.
Wow.
My CFO has been with me for 7.
Yeah,
I've got leadership around me that have been with me long, long term, and
yeah.
that's the way I want it.
How do you test? I think like in terms of how they treat other people, their reference calls, sometimes you can simulate it in an interview sense, or just even watching them interact with your team. How do you tend to like look for humility in your candidates when you're hiring?
I ask questions about how they've made mistakes
Hmm.
in their past roles. Tell me about a time where you have, royally screwed something up. What was that? How did you handle it? What did you learn from it? What do you do moving forward with it? When I hear it, it's not necessarily that I'm wanting to hear how they screwed up. I want to hear how they handled it. How are they presenting it to me today? Tell me about a time when you and your coworker or you and your boss didn't see eye to eye. What was
Hmm.
that like? What was that
Hmm.
situation? How did you handle it? I want to hear when people are saying that they accepted responsibility for their actions.
Yeah.
And then, or I hear about how they're throwing somebody under the bus,
Right.
because then I know right away you do have a bit of an ego, and you're
Right.
not very good with people,
Yeah.
and you can hear in their tone of how they handle the conversation with you, because nobody's expecting that question. I don't give
Yeah.
them questions
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
advance.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
for hard work, for work ethic, I want to know what they did when they were a kid.
Mm.
because I can't, I say this all the time as a joke. I don't have a DeLorean with a flux capacitor. I cannot go back in time and fix you. So
Yeah,
you
yeah.
either come with work ethic or you don't.
I know.
And
It's so
how old were
interesting.
you when you got your first job? What did you do with
Yeah.
the money?
Yeah.
When if somebody says they were 16, I ask questions about like, did you ever babysit? Did you mow
Mm.
lawns? Did you rake leaves? I want to know what was their work ethic because that carries on. Did they play sports? You know, sports today, these kids can't even have jobs. My
I
daughter
know.
can dance, and it's like, I never see her.
100%,
How is she?
100%.
And she's like, I think when I'm gonna go work at I can't remember In-N-Out Burger. I think that's her favorite
Yeah, yeah,
place.
yeah,
I'm
yeah,
like,
yeah.
when are you gonna have time to do that? I don't say that. I'm like, yeah, good. I'll get a discount on fries.
It's actually supposed to be a good place to work. They're known for, I think, like, perks and benefits that are outsized, I think, compared to their peers. So she's wise. I dance and I think I learned grit, but I think I actually learned too much grit. Sometimes I have to like tone it down a little bit, like when it gets that hard, sometimes you should
Oh
actually
yeah.
pivot. Um,
Okay. So watch Dance Moms on
yeah.
Netflix or whatever. Oh my gosh.
I know. I think that the gift that my mom gave me was she could care less, to be honest. She just dropped me out. She was such not a stage mom. In fact, it was a little bit of a hassle. She'd probably prefer if I didn't do it because she had to drive me around. And what that meant was I had to have intrinsic motivation.
hmm
Like it was just mine. And I actually think that like there's this inverse correlation where when someone cares too much for you, sometimes folks don't internalize the why they're doing it in the first place. It's something I think
hmm
about, even from like a management's perspective these days.
hmm
Um, because to your point, you can't make people work harder. You can't make people want things like that drive, that willingness to spend like, extra 10 minutes looking through the slide one more time. Like
hmm
that's just organic chops that people come with.
Totally agree.
It's interesting. The other thing that I'm increasingly listening for too, in terms of sort of like the humility piece, is just pronouns. Like, are you using we or are you using I?
hmm
And it's really interesting especially when folks toggle between I when it is the good things and we or they when it is the bad things.
Mm.
Because, my general thought is ultimately as a leader, you are responsible. So like if someone on my team makes like a mix up or something, I actually can't really blame them because ultimately I signed off on it in some capacity. So I don't know,
Yeah.
it's those are things that I'm just increasingly really aware of. So, you know, as you are thinking about your, looking ahead for 2026, what themes or even priorities are most in mind for you? And this can be you as a leader, this can be you as in Lone Peak as a whole.
So last summer, or maybe it was the summer before, gosh, these years are just going through pretty quick.
I
There
know.
was a new CEO of DCA, and he and I were on a panel together, and he said something about his imperatives. People say pillars, people say something else, whatever they want to say. Um, and I thought, man, I've been talking about initiatives, and he's saying imperatives. And just like what
Mm,
you said, words really matter.
yeah,
So I switched the name uh, initiative to imperative on the three things that we were working on that year.
yeah,
And it was an unwavering investment in our people, increasing access to care, and the third one is scaling up performance.
mm,
And so those three things as an initiative for that year, I guess it would have been 2024 or 20 whatever. We put them as imperatives in 2025, and I just keep doubling down.
yeah,
Those are the three things that if it doesn't fit into one of those three things, then why are we doing it?
yeah,
If an acquisition isn't increasing access to care, and I mean truly, because if we're acquiring a practice and all we're going to do is do the exact same thing that that practice is doing, then am I really increasing access to care or am I just adding to my umbrella? If it is an office that's open 4 days a week, doesn't have general anesthesia or doesn't have ortho, or there's something else that we can do to actually make it better,
Yeah.
Now I'm starting to think like I am actually, if we acquire this practice, here's what it's doing for the care of that community, and here's what it will be doing a year from now because it's under our umbrella, because of
Yeah.
what we've done.
Yeah.
And so then the acquisition now starts to even narrow our focus more to, okay, wow, this office, I just looked at a practice and I couldn't believe how successful it was. Like, I've never seen margins like this in any practice. And I'm like, how am I ever going to make this better?
Yeah,
How am
yeah.
I-
It's like ours to lose. Now it's like yours to lose, right?
Yeah,
You can
now
only go
exactly.
down.
Now all I can do is make it decline or hold
Yeah.
on to it.
Yeah.
Is that truly increasing access to care, or is that just adding to, like, wow, now we're even more,
Right.
awesome.
Yeah.
I still haven't said no to it.
Yeah. I mean, it sounds like you're great practice, but to your point, then we get away from value creation into just adding EBITDA mode.
Mhm. And
Um,
that's the rack and stack them, and everybody's done it, and then they get that first investment, and that first investor goes, wow, and they pay way too many multiple on it, and then, what, you don't even have a real company here. They're not even on the same point of sale system. Like, what is
yeah.
going on here? And I don't, I've done that. That's not what our imperatives are.
Yeah.
So where and so it has to fit under, if the acquisition is an acquisition that we want to target, it needs to fit in that area.
Yeah.
And then if anything to do with people, if it's training or whatever, is this really fitting in the unwavering investment in people? Because I think a leader not only has to say yes, but they have to say no. And one of the greatest qualities is where we deploy capital. And that's also human capital. I don't
Right.
want people running around doing stuff that, golly, we're just either recreating the wheel or we're just spinning our wheels. And
Right.
I
Right. It's
can't
also
be.
demoralizing for them too. Like it's like, there's only so many times you can ask your team to run around in circles
Mhm.
without like an outcome that actually moves the needle forward because, then they might stop running as hard because it never actually matters in the first place.
Right. Yeah. If you have
And
too
I've
many
seen that.
initiatives.
Yeah, yeah, I've seen that happen so much in like, early in my career when I was in startup world and it was like, every month we pivot. It's like, okay, well, it turns out people are like, well, this is going to change again, so I'm just going to kind of do my own thing.
I lived in that world too. I created that world.
Yeah, but there's a humility piece. Now and now you're not doing it, or at least you're intentional enough to know to make those decisions wisely.
Hmm.
Well, it's interesting because I think in some ways, what you're describing as your three imperatives. If you look at that list every year, and it is really sort of the same in a way, it's almost like those get elevated to values in a way. Like just
Hmm.
these are in some ways universal values of your firm that then trickle into actual initiatives and ownership and metrics, et cetera. Like each year specifically.
Right.
Yeah,
Well, yeah, we don't just look at it every year, and you're going to think that it's hokey, but in every executive meeting, we have it every single Monday. We
yeah,
go over the purpose of the meeting, the rules of engagement, and we go over our three imperatives every single meeting.
mm-hmm.
And I mean, if you can't say it by heart by now, and every morning huddle, because I have a smile, I call my corporate center, corporate office, the Smile Center. It's
Yeah,
hokey, well, kind of
I
like your
love
last
it.
name, right?
Yeah.
It's funny, it's cute, but how could you be upset? Like, I worked for two other DSOs, and you call it the home office, and they're there really to help. But it
Yeah.
always seemed like in some ways it was like this, like they didn't always communicate well. There might have been fights back and forth, or the ivory tower or whatever.
Right.
And then the other one that I worked at, I purposefully called it the support center. But if you say it too fast, it sounds like sports center. And
Yeah.
so I'm like, okay, that's not going to work. And so I came up with Smile Center as a joke, because how are you going to be mad at the Smile Center?
I know it's fun. I'm
It's
I'm like
good.
all for the cheese. Again, we were talking about this before the
The
podcast, but
culture, right? Yeah.
those little things, they matter so
Yeah.
much. And even support, that word is almost like demoting certain jobs, like
Mm.
um back office, something I think about a lot because, our organization has producing teams, quote unquote, and then we have non-producing teams that support them. there's almost this intrinsic sort of like one is more important than the other. And even that's something I don't even like. How do we get away from this? We're all supporting each other, obviously. So there's not just one team that's holding up the others. Like we're all in it together. Just these, again, words, these little things it comes down to.
You sure
But
do.
it's the other thing I was sort of reflecting on our when we were speaking at Skytale about our as we look ahead, what are the trends that we are seeing for 2026? And I think one of the main things that came up besides AI, which is an obligatory part of every conversation, it's just the focus on like operational discipline and
Mhm.
quality. Like, why are these things sitting under the same banner? Like other than just adding, 1 + 1 = 2. Like there needs to be a why. Even at Skytail, there needs to be a why. Both investment banking and management consulting are under the Skytail brand. We need to be synergistic and help each other out. So it's interesting that you brought up that piece too, in terms of that and operational excellence and saying no.
Yeah. I was on the phone with our COO today, and he was sharing with me because we had this big recruiting function here in Denver last week, and so our director of mentor relationships was in the car with him, and he asked him that this is a doctor in
Yeah.
Virginia, and he said, "So if we could fix one thing, what would you fix?" And so the COO immediately just said, "I'd like to fix the show rate because we're in pediatrics. We do
Yeah.
have a lot of
Yeah.
Medicaid. Our
Yeah.
show rate's about 70%. If
Yeah.
it was 75, just 75, we wouldn't know what to do with all the patients. Like we would be it would just be like crazy awesome."
Yeah.
And so then he was thinking about that. And so on Monday morning, he called all of his regional directors and he asked them, and he said, "I got four different answers."
In terms
It's
of
like
how to increase show rate. Or
he got
what did he
four
ask?
separate. He got one of them did say fix the show rate, but three said
Oh,
something different. And he's like,
interesting.
how do they not know? Like this is what, and he's like,
Yeah.
I just haven't been as communicative as
Yeah.
as clear. Like this is your number one calling right now.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's you think that that's what everybody thinks, but you have to, as a leader, you have to be so crystal clear on everything.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And when you know yourself and like for me personally, I do speak in generalities and I do. And it's been probably 2 to 3 years to where I go, okay, what did you hear there? And I have to, because I want to be clearer, but I know that how I present it necessarily isn't as clear as I want it to be.
Yeah.
So just these little things that you can do. And sometimes I pick it up, or somebody may tell me, and this is why you have to be open-minded and humble, just like, well, you're never clear. If somebody, like you can get defensive or go, how can I get better at that? Or what would
Right.
you like me to do differently or whatever?
Right. Right. At the end of the day, if they didn't hear your message, it actually doesn't even matter why. It clearly didn't land. So it
Hmm.
could be because you weren't clear. It could be because they interpreted it. Like it's sort of like I'm someone who just I deal with the what to do with it piece. Sometimes the why did we get here? Um, well, it's oftentimes important, but sometimes it can be a little bit of a waste of time. But it's so true. I think I increasingly, well, I get proven like daily, both at work and in personal life, that like you really cannot assume someone heard what you do not explicitly say with your words.
Yeah.
And even then, everyone comes up with their own agenda. And two, you have to do it at least 7 times. And that was something that I was taught, as a like this sort of a number a long time ago. It's like you really have to say it over and over and over again, to drive a point home. Even saying something crystal clear once, especially if you're a leader of a large organization and you want to make sure everyone is running in the exact same direction, it just has to kind of become a mantra in many ways.
Yep. Very, very, very true.
So I would love to, I could chat with you for a much longer time, but unfortunately need to kind of wind down. So I always love to wrap just with a few kind of rapid fire questions, if you will.
Okay.
So first question, what's the hardest part of your job today, and what do you enjoy the most?
It's probably the same thing.
That's actually, I was gonna say they can be opposite or they could actually be the same in some cases.
I think the hardest part of my job is when I have doctors that I have to have conversations with that are tough.
Yeah.
And I do them. When I do them, I feel like I've prepared for it and I feel like I can have that conversation. It's getting to want to do them, to know that it's on my list of things I want to accomplish today.
Right.
And it could be, it could be a number of different things that, it could be a complaint from a team member. It could be um, something else that
Yeah.
they're taking off too many days of work or something, that it's just, once it gets to me,
Yeah.
it's already been tried and it hasn't been resolved.
Right.
So
Right. Yeah. Like it shouldn't have escalated. Like if it's up to you, there's something that might.
yeah, and so, for every amazing doctor that's completely 100% engaged, I'm going to have one that's just kind of the opposite. So if I've got 12 or 15 of those out of the 200, then I got 12 or 15 of these out of the 200. And then I have 180 in the middle that are
Right.
just, great. They go to work, they love their parent or the patients, they love the parents of the
Oh,
patients,
maybe their
and they
parents
love the
too.
team members,
Yeah.
but then I have some that are just uber excited and all,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
then I have some that are like, yeah, this isn't what I thought I signed up for, and so it's you got to take the good with the bad. What do I love the most? Oh, geez. Because that's not what I love the most for
Yeah.
sure. What do I love the most? Man, I got a text from somebody this morning after one of our morning huddles, which we have morning huddles every Tuesday and Friday for the whole group. And I'm going to read it.
I
And
would love
I hope
that.
I don't
Yeah.
even cry. I hope I don't even cry. Um,
You know,
where is it? Okay, here you go.
we've never had a crier on the podcast. I would be personally honored to be the first host of a crier. So you just make yourself comfortable.
I just have to tell you this. Attending huddle this morning, I watched and observed what you have built for this company. It's truly a work of passion. For one, I'm so proud to be able to say I served under your leadership. Won't get any mushier, but you have kicked butt. Big hugs to you.
That's a really
That's
amazing thing to
from an
say.
employee. That's not like, my wife or something.
Yeah. You should read it to your wife, see what she says. Um, that's really, you should be really, really proud of that.
And
You
then,
know,
yeah, this weekend I told you we had this event and for recruiting, and we hosted it at the Denver Nuggets game. So we had a
oh,
thing, and
fun.
anybody that was going to attend, they were all students, D4s, D3s from different schools, and we didn't want just anybody because they see it's a Nuggets game. Oh, we want to go to that. So, we had them write an essay as to why they want to treat underserved kids and underserved populations, overlooked in the majority of their lives, and why do you want to do that?
Right.
Instead of going, what do you think about this? Or, like, did you know that we do this? You
Yeah.
got to flip the script. Like, this is what we do, and this is what we love doing. Anyway,
Yeah.
there were 22 doctors. I read every single one of them, and it changed how I presented myself too, because I grew up that way. I
Right.
grew up where we didn't go to the doctor because we didn't have money. We didn't go to the orthodontist because they
Yeah.
didn't. I mean, there's no way. Even if ortho was 3 grand back then, I don't know how
Right.
much it
Right.
was. We
Right.
didn't have money
Right.
for that.
Right.
So to read those and to see that these kids or young adults had personal hardships, they had whatever it was to get to where they are and decide this is what I want to do for the rest of my life. That makes me super proud. And so I remember sharing that I'd read their essays and I shared a personal portion of it. Later on, I'm talking to one of the doctors and he said, yeah, well, after I got out of the military, I said, oh, you were the dental assistant in the Air Force. And he goes, you really did read the essays. I'm like, yeah, I really did
Oh,
read the essays.
wow. Wow. But you
So
know what that means is for every person like you, there's someone who's put it into Chat GPT and said, come up with a 10-minute speech for me to give, to give these folks. And so you can't replace care. And it's a nice reminder of that.
it's funny you say that because after I'd written it, And I read it to my wife and I said, I'd normally throw this into Chat GPT just to kind of doll it up and
Yeah.
make it a little
Yeah.
bit better. And I said, I'm not going to, because I don't even want to see what comes out of it.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
this is
Well,
my authentic self and I want to come across authentic.
I think you knew, well, you know how to lead clearly. And
Yeah.
so, turns out trusting that sometimes can be the most powerful thing of all.
It's just an eyelash.
So score. I'm gonna pretend it was something else. Um, well, right, it has been an absolute pleasure to connect with you today. I do something a little bit cheesy, and Ben, our CEO, now does it with me, where when little messages or nice things like that happen, I have a rainy day folder, sort of a happy folder that I put those notes into. And so, if you ever need like a little boost or in a few years, you can look back and just remind yourself of your impact. So I would encourage you to create a rainy day folder if you don't have one already and stick that message in there.
All right. Well, thanks a bunch. I love it.
Yeah. All right. Well, wonderful. Thank you for joining us, and looking forward to our next conversation.
Okay. Thanks, Annie.
Thanks.